Week 2 did not disappoint. What a weekend it was in college football. We're going to look ahead to week 3 now, and we'll start with our top 25, our brand new rankings for the upcoming week. And we'll start at the bottom. So UCLA at 2-0 with a big win over San Diego State, a convincing win. We're really impressed by them, and also beat Coastal Carolina in week 1. So they've got 2 wins over a pretty good group of 5 teams. And just back to the process of how I'm ranking these teams. If you missed the video last week, I'm not ranking these teams based really off of resume, but I'm also ignoring all the preseason rankings, all of the rankings, even from last week. It's a brand new top 25 every week. And I'm just looking at what these teams have done so far this season, how they have looked, in my opinion, of who has been the most impressive so far. Yes, you have to look at the preseason, not preseason rankings, but you have to look at just other things like the talent on the team and things like that. So you can't, it's not just based off of results and resume. You have to at least know about these teams. But at the same time, for example, Michigan and Georgia are 2 teams that I think are, I'll go ahead and tell you, I've still got them in my college football playoff predictions, but neither one of those teams is going to be in the top 5. I think that they are capable and are going to be top 5 teams, but based off of their performances so far, other teams have just looked better. So hopefully that makes sense. We'll go to number 24 now, and that's Washington State. Really nice win over Wisconsin. They had an easy win in week 1, but then this was a big win. Wisconsin is a team that was favored in this game. A lot of people were hyping up Wisconsin. I did last week pick Washington State to win this game, but I'm still high on Wisconsin. So I think this is a good win for Washington State. And I talked about in the preseason how I thought Washington State was maybe a top 25 team this year. I didn't know because of the schedule and everything they'd have to go through if they would be in the top 25. It felt like this was a good team, just kind of like with Duke. I talked about Duke and how I thought they were one of the better teams in the country, but their schedule and everything, I didn't know if they would wind up in the top 25. And we'll see if these teams stay there, but as of right now, both teams are. Number 23 is Tulane, a loss to Ole Miss. Yeah, that was a tough loss, but I was still impressed with this Tulane team. They really impressed me. Without Michael Pratt, you got to go with your backup quarterback, and I was really impressed with their defense. This is an explosive Ole Miss offense, and I know they wound up scoring a decent amount of points in this game, but it took a while. It took a while for Ole Miss to get going. Tulane was winning this game for a long time, so I was impressed with them. And yes, you can say, well, there are other teams that are 2-0. Why do you have a 1-1 team ranked here? And they didn't really even move from last week. Well, that game just validated to me that this is a top 25 team because they had a chance to beat Ole Miss without their starting quarterback. So I got Tulane still ranked at number 23. Number 22 is North Carolina. Not a great performance, honestly, against Appalachian State. It seems like they just, for whatever reason, they struggle with that team. I don't know what it is. But they still have the win over South Carolina. That's enough to keep them ranked for me. Tar Heels at number 22. Number 21, Oregon State. Kind of waiting to see them play a quality opponent, but so far so good for the Beavers. And again, coming in at number 21. Next up at number 20, we've got Miami. All right, I ranked Miami last week, and a lot of you said, what are you doing? Why do you like Miami so much? I told you, I watched that first game, and it just looked like a different team, and we saw that against Texas A&M. And there will be some that say, well, it was Texas A&M. Texas A&M was 5-7 last year. And by the way, I think I mentioned on my takeaways video that I would have Miami and Texas A&M ranked this week. When I actually sat down and did the teams, I didn't have a spot for Texas A&M. So they're not ranked, but they're like number 26 for me. I still think that's a good team, and I think they're going to have a good season. I just think Miami is that good as well. But we don't know for sure, and that's why I'm not going to jump the Hurricanes up into the top 15, and I'm not going to keep Texas A&M ranked because it could be that these teams, neither one of them are very good. But my personal thoughts on this and what I think based off of these first 2 weeks, I believe that Miami and Texas A&M are both really good teams. And I think they'll prove that as the season goes along. But it's still early. And again, I'm not going to jump Miami up too high just yet. Number 19 is Duke. Also 2-0 with a win over Clemson, of course. They got an easy win this past week. And the Blue Devils, they got some opportunities. They've got some opportunities. They play Notre Dame. We'll see if they can maybe make a run and get into that ACC championship. If it's not Clemson, if Clemson doesn't bounce back and Florida State does go, maybe Duke or Miami winds up being that team to play Florida State in the ACC championship. Also look out for North Carolina. Of course, we got them here. And then watch out for Louisville we got a really favorable schedule. I've got Colorado at number 18. Very impressive win against Nebraska. The thing about Colorado, and the reason I'm not jumping them up too high, is the fact that we just don't really know about TCU and Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska is 0-2. TCU has only played an easy opponent in week 2. So it could be that TCU and Nebraska are not very good, or it could be that Colorado is really good. And that's why I say we need about 4 weeks, maybe even 5 weeks to really be able to evaluate these teams. Any rankings that come out right now are not really going to be accurate because we just don't have enough information. So even my rankings, I'll admit it, these are not great rankings, but there are no great rankings right now. I'm just doing the best I can with what we have, and I think Colorado's definitely proved they're a top 20 team, perhaps even higher. And I said this the other day, if they lose to Oregon and it's a really close game and they look good in that game, they might go up in these rankings because they would still have proven themselves. And so it's not just about wins and losses, especially early in the season when you've got teams playing totally different schedules. Number 17 is LSU. They bounced back this week with an easy win over an FCS opponent. Really not much to say about that. We'll see what they do against Mississippi State on Saturday. Ole Miss. So I was kind of back and forth because on the one hand I was like, well, they struggled for a while against Tulane. Tulane didn't have their starting quarterback. But I think it was really more about Tulane being a good team. And you do like what you saw from Ole Miss there in the second half. They were able to put them away. Really, really impressive finish to this game for the Rebels. Really bounced back in that fourth quarter. So I'm going to keep them up here. I got them at number 16. I still am impressed with that win on the road. It's tough to go on the road and win games. I mean, look at Utah against Baylor. And also look at Oregon against Texas Tech. It's tough to go on the road and beat teams that are even decent. I mean, they don't have to be great teams, but it's tough to beat pretty good teams on the road. All right, number 15 is Utah. It's hard to really rank them because are we ranking them with Cam Rising or without him? Because I assume he's coming back here soon, and so it's hard to rank them. I've got them at 15. That was not a great performance against Baylor, but they were able to get the win, and so that was impressive that they were able to pull that off. Number 14, Oregon, really the same story. Didn't look great against Texas Tech, but they made the plays when they needed to. Got to win on the road. I'm not going to penalize them much, although I think I did have them a little bit higher. But like I said, I don't just move teams up and down. It's a brand new ranking every week, and so I didn't even look really at where I had them last week. It might have been in the top 10. I can't remember, but I think it actually was in the top 10. But Oregon at 2-0, Utah at 2-0. Two teams still with a lot of potential, and two teams that escaped some pretty tough road games. Number 13, Kansas State. All right, they haven't really played anyone great, but they put it on Troy this week, and Troy is normally a pretty good group of 5 team, and they dominated really in both of their 2 games. Looking at what Missouri has done the last couple of weeks, I now feel like Kansas State's probably going to win that game on Saturday. And this team looks to be maybe the biggest threat to Texas outside of our number 12 team, and that's Oklahoma. Really impressed with what Oklahoma did against SMU, and it's really about the defense. I mean, look, SMU has an explosive offense, a lot of talent. They have a lot of Power 5 transfers on that roster, and Oklahoma just dominated. Their defense has been excellent to start the season, and you can say, well, it's Arkansas State, it's SMU. But look, last year against similar opponents, they were still giving up points, and so I'm really impressed with the defense. The offense, maybe not quite as good as last year. We'll have to kind of wait and see as we get into the season. But they've definitely fixed some things on offense, and our own defense, I should say. And Oklahoma looks back to being Oklahoma and perhaps even a top 10 team. Again, I need to see them against some better competition, but really impressed with what they've done so far. Number 11 is Alabama. I didn't drop them a ton because Texas looks really, really good. And you also have to look at their win. You can't just look at the one game. Look at their win over Middle Tennessee, where they just absolutely dominated. Middle Tennessee only lost to Missouri by like 4 points. So that tells me that Middle Tennessee is not a bad team, and Alabama dominated in that game. The problem is going to be, and I talked about this last week, the problem for them is going to be, what do you do when you face a really good defense that makes you throw the football, which is what Texas did. Jalen Milroe could not get it done. Yeah, he hit on a couple of deep balls, but overall the consistency was not there in the passing game, and Alabama is going to struggle against really good defenses. But they have so much talent that they're still probably going to roll over a lot of the teams, even in the SEC, and I still think it's a really good team. But I don't really see them being in the college football playoff based off of that performance against Texas. Number 10 is Tennessee. Vols are 2-0. Did not look good against Austin Peay. What was it, 13-6 at halftime? So they do drop from where I had them last week. But I'm going to still look at the Virginia game. That was impressive, and I still got them in the top 10. Number 9, Ohio State. Not a super impressive performance against Youngstown State. So I don't know what the deal is with Ohio State. They just can't seem to get clicking just yet. Plenty of time for them to do that. The good news is the defense has been really good. And I think with Oklahoma and Ohio State, you've seen a lot of improvement on the defensive side so far. And so the Buckeyes, if they can get that offense clicking and an improved defense, watch out. They could wind up being right in the thick of things in that playoff race at the end of the season. Number 8 is USC. Trojans 2-0. Actually, that should be 3-0 because they played a week 0 game. My mistake there. But Trojans now 3-0. Really haven't been. They played Stanford this weekend. I just don't believe that. So this is where the preseason thing comes in. You have to look at what you thought about Stanford, not necessarily where you ranked them because they weren't ranked, but I came into the season believing that Stanford was not going to be very good. So that's why I'm not giving USC a ton of credit. We might find out in a few weeks that Stanford's pretty good this week, and that win becomes a lot better for USC. But at this point, doesn't look like a great win, although they dominated and they were really impressive. And so that's just not a signature win, and we're still waiting on USC to get that. But still undefeated and looking good so far, and looking like a team that could make a run at the college football playoff. Number 7 is Georgia. I get it. They're the defending champs the last 2 years, but that means absolutely nothing in these rankings. These rankings are about the first 2 weeks, and Georgia continues to get off to slow starts offensively. Similar to Ohio State, I guess, although Georgia does usually kind of get it going later in the game. So right now, Bulldogs just haven't looked like a top 5 or top 2 team. I think they'll probably show up against South Carolina and show that they are still one of those top teams. But based off of what we've seen so far, they're at 7. And same thing for Michigan. Michigan has looked pretty good, but they haven't looked dominant. I mean, based off of their performances, you wouldn't say they look better than Florida State or Texas or some of these top teams. So I've got them at number 6 right now. Again, I'm very high on Michigan and Georgia and what I think they're going to be and what I think they will be or can be when they're playing at their full potential. Just based off of these first 2 weeks, we haven't seen that. And again, I know people are freaking out because I have those teams outside of the top 5. But that's what, in my opinion, we have seen in these first 2 weeks. Washington at number 5. They got an easy win this week, I believe, over Tulsa. The Boise State win is still pretty impressive, and so I've still got them up at number 5. Number 4 is Notre Dame. Impressed with what they did against NC State, and I guess I just got in the habit of putting 2-0. They are also 3-0, just like USC, so I apologize for not giving Notre Dame and USC credit for that 3rd win, although do you really deserve it? I mean, one of those wins was against a pretty bad team. But anyways, Notre Dame, very impressive against NC State. I thought they'd win this game fairly comfortably, and they did. Really just hit some big plays, and that's what has been missing, I think, on their offense, the big plays. They're starting to get those now, and they still got a great run game, a great defense. You look at the schedule ahead of them. I think Notre Dame is now starting to look more and more like a very, very serious playoff contender. Watch out for the Irish. Number 3, Penn State. Easy win this past week, but it still goes back to the West Virginia game. Again, just really, really impressed with that win. And that's why I've got the Nittany Lions at number 3. Number 2 is Texas. Of course, a huge win over Alabama. That's the best, probably the best win. Yeah, I'd say that's the best win in college football right now, going on the road. And it wasn't just that they won. It was that they looked like the better team. And now that they've got a defense playing the way that they are and the offense is starting to click, Texas becomes another team that maybe not just a playoff contender. They might be a team that could win it all this year. Longhorns looking really good. And the Rice game, even where they didn't look great, they still won that game comfortably. But this ranking is really more about the win over Alabama. Number 1, Florida State, 2-0, easy win this past week. But I still feel like they were more impressive in their win over LSU than Texas was in their win over Alabama. Yes, the Texas win was more impressive, but I'm just talking about the performance. Florida State just looked a little bit better to me than Texas, but it's very close. And those are obviously the 2 best wins in college football right now. If we're going resume, Texas should be number 1. If we're going performance, I think Florida State should be number 1. And at this point, again, I think it's silly to rank teams based off of resume when no one really has a resume. So that's my top 25 for this week. And again, next week, it'll be a brand new top 25. If Georgia impresses me against South Carolina, they might go to number 1. If Florida State struggles or Texas struggles or whatever, you might see those teams drop. It's not just win and move up, lose and go down with my rankings. It's a brand new top 25 every week. I would love to get your rankings. How would you rank the teams right now? Give me your thoughts, your comments down below.